Hello, my dear friends. It happens to be 3:15 a.m. Why I'm up now recording a drasha is a separate discussion for later or another time. But I have a brilliant idea that I want to share with you. I just opened the door to my front door of my house. It's pouring, and the weather forecast shows the prediction is that it's going to rain all day tomorrow, on Friday through the night into Shabbos afternoon. And that means if the rain doesn't let up, we won't be able to sit in the sukkah. Anything could change. We hope Mitzvah Shem will change, but that's the weather forecast right now. And this reminded me of a Gemara in Sukkah, and it gave me a brilliant idea. I've always wondered, where do I stand religiously in comparison to my contemporaries, in comparison to the Jewish population around the world, in Israel, Eretz Yisrael, and other places? Where do I stand in comparison to previous generations? What percentile am I in? When we were younger, we used to take regions and we took achievement tests, and they in the grade it would tell you what percentile you're in. You were in comparison to everybody else that took the test, the 42nd percentile, 92nd, 94th, whatever it was. So I've always wondered, what percentile am I in when it comes to religious growth and religious development, and in terms of becoming a tzaddik? Where am I holding? It's a mystery. So I came up with a brilliant idea how a person, and maybe you've also wondered the same thing. How would one know? I got a brilliant idea. So here is my idea. The fact that it's raining now reminds me of the Gemara in Sukkah. The Gemara says that when Mashiach will come, and the Jewish people will be rewarded for observing the mitzvahs of the Torah. So there will be some people who will come and say, if we didn't have a mitzvahs, you didn't give us the Torah. If we had the Torah, if we had the opportunity, we also would have been big tzaddikim. Not fair. So God says, okay, I'll give you an easy mitzvah. Try it out. So God says, make for yourselves a sukkah. So the people go and they build a sukkah, and God makes a chamsin. It's super hot, and there's no air conditioning in the sukkah, and people can't stand it. So they leave the sukkah and they kick the sukkah, and they're done with the sukkah. So God laughs and he says, you see, you said that if you had a chance to do a mitzvah, you also would have excelled. You see, look what happened. You couldn't stay in the sukkah. So the Gemara asks, what's the taina? What did they do wrong? Even a Jewish person, if he's mitztayer, if he's in pain, you don't have to stay in the sukkah. When it's raining, you don't have to stay in the sukkah. He's a mitztayer because it's super uncomfortable. Person would be in his house and it'll be dripping on his head. He would leave the house. So if the house would be 115, 120 degrees, you wouldn't stay in the house either. So what's the taina that a God Baruch Hu says, why did you leave the sukkah? So the Gemara says God's taina is not that they left. God's taina is that they kicked the sukkah. Why is that so significant that they kicked the sukkah? Okay, so they kicked it, big deal. There's nothing, they didn't do any, there was no avera to kick the Torah and say don't kick a sukkah. But the answer is that if you want to measure a person, you look at his aspirations. What does the person want? What does the person desire? What is the person hoping for? So when they left the sukkah, when it was hot, if their aspiration was to be able to fulfill the mitzvah, and it was a tremendous disappointment that they couldn't do the mitzvah, then they wouldn't have kicked the sukkah. The fact that they kicked the sukkah showed they really had no interest in fulfilling the mitzvah of sukkah. I remember my shver, Rabbi Prostin Zatzal, my Fegi's father. He had such an enormous love for the mitzvah of sukkah, the opposite of those people that kick the sukkah when it's hot. I remember he was sitting in my house, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago, and it was raining. And he kept on looking out the window, and he was transfixed, and he would intense gaze, and he was waiting and anticipating and hoping, and maybe it'll change, like somebody who's in a hospital and with a loved one that's hooked up to a monitor and they're not doing well, and the doctors are coming in and out, and the person's just hoping and davening and praying that things will change. So that's how my shver was. He was so enormously disappointed because he had such a tremendous desire to do the mitzvah of sukkah. That's what we call she'ifos. She'ifos are aspirations. His aspirations to do the mitzvah of sukkah and other mitzvahs was phenomenal. So when the goyim or whoever it is that did not leave the sukkah, and they kicked the sukkah, that shows that they. I mean, maybe there were some people that didn't kick the sukkah, but those people that kicked the sukkah, that shows that they had no spiritual aspirations, and you can't get into Olam Haba if you don't have any she'ifos, any spiritual aspirations. So I was thinking that if we want to measure ourselves, if we want to know what percentile are we in, we won't know, but percentile. But if you want to get a general idea of where are we holding, so the way to tell where a person is spiritually is by measuring the level of the person's aspiration. So here's my idea: if it's raining tomorrow, and let's say a half hour before Yantif, so we should take a lie detector test. I don't know where we're going to get one, but take a lie detector test. And here's the question that we should have somebody ask us: are you disappointed that you're not going to be sitting in the sukkah today because it's raining? And I would assume that a lie detector was able to show what level of honesty or dishonesty the person's at. So if the person says, I'm terribly disappointed, and the lie detector reads 100%, okay, then you know that person's a tzaddik, because he loves the mitzvah of sukkah, like my shver, like my father-in-law. He's so disappointed. But then if the person says, yeah, I wish I could do the mitzvah, but the lie detector goes, the needle goes all the way down to zero, and you know the person's a total phony. And he has no interest in religious development or spirituality. And then, let's say the person says, yeah, I'm disappointed, and the needle is someplace in the middle, maybe it's at 25%, 25% lie, or 60% lie, or what. That will tell you exactly where the person is, the level of the person's aspiration, how much a person is disappointed that they can't sit in the sukkah. That will show the person's she'ifos, the person's aspirations, and that will be telling where the person stands in terms of religious development. So we could all, I don't know, you may not be able to get a hold of a lie detector tomorrow, but it's a question that we should ask ourselves as we sit in the house. If, chas v'shalom, we're not able to go into the sukkah and fulfill the mitzvah, make the bracha and eat in the sukkah, we need to ask ourselves, are we disappointed, or are we, chas v'shalom, happy? Are we boet? Did we kick the sukkah when we didn't have to go in there? And goodbye and good riddance, I'm so happy to be able to stay in my house. Or are we enormously disappointed? About 20 years ago, I delivered a drasha on Yom Kippur about the famous story of Bunch of Shvaig. Bunch of Shvaig, this is a story by I.L. Peretz. Bunch of Shvaig, the story goes, the Yiddish writer, Bunch of Shvaig was enormously poor, and he suffered his whole life, and nothing went, and he had no parnasa, no income, and everything, nothing went well. And as his name indicated, he never complained. Schweig means to be quiet. Buncha was always a Schweiger. He never said anything. And then finally, at the end of his life, he passed away, and he made his way up to the mountain before the court and the tribunal before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and there were angels. There were prosecuting angels and defending angels, and the defending angels said, "Bunch of Schweig." He never complained, and he had nothing. And those angels detailed all the suffering that he went through in his lifetime and the poverty. And then the judge turned, whoever the judge was in the story, turned to Bunch of Schweig, turned to the prosecuting angels and say, "Do you have anything to say?" And they said, "Nothing. We have nothing to say. It's true. He was always quiet. He never complained about anything, and he suffered his whole life." So the judge, together with the court, says, "Bunch of Schweig, you can have now in Olam Haba, you're in paradise. You can have anything you want. Tell us what you want, and we'll give it to you." So Bunch of Schweig says, "Really?" They said, "Yeah, really." So he couldn't believe it. Really? Now, all of it after my whole life of suffering, really? Now Now I can have whatever I want. And they said, yes, don't worry. Tell us what you want. So Bunch of Shvaik said, well, if it wouldn't be too much trouble, Your Honor, can I have a hot roll with butter every day for breakfast delivered to my house? And when the court heard that, the judge and and the jury, they heard that, they bowed their heads in shame because they appreciated the enormity of the tragedy, that that's all that Buncha could aspire for was a bagel with butter. What do I take out of that story? I take out the question that we have to ask ourselves are, when it comes to spirituality, are we like Bunch of Shvai, that we what are we aspiring for to have in Olam Haba? What do we want our Olam Haba to be? Will we be satisfied with a roll and butter? Do we want to have an unbelievable religious experience and become closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Or are we going to, or is our aspiration to become wealthy in Olam Haba and to have a fancy house with a lot of paintings and beautiful cars and exquisite food? What will our aspirations be? Is it going to be modest or meager in terms of spirituality, like Bunch of Shvaig? Or are we going to ask the world? When it comes to materialism, people are not like Bunch of Shvaig. Most people are not like Bunch of Shvaig. People have grandiose dreams. I remember seeing in the drugstore a person in a wheelchair being wheeled into the drugstore at age. A person looked like they were in their 90s, and they were buying a lottery ticket. And I was wondering to myself, what is the person going to do if he or she wins the lottery? What are they going to do? Let's say they win $50 million. What are they going to do with the money? But it's so deeply ingrained in people that people want to be rich and people want to have exquisite things and to travel and to enjoy themselves. But what about when it comes to spirituality? Are we like Bunch of Shvai, that our desire, our aspiration is so meager? And that's the question that we should be asking ourselves when if tomorrow, chas v'shalom, we're not able to sit in the sukkah, if we're distraught, if we're in pain, if we're so upset, if before sukkahs we're davening that the rain should stop, that'll be a sign that we're at a very high percentile. But if we're happy with the status quo and we're not going to complain, and on the contrary, wow, I don't have to bother with the sukkah. I don't have to sleep in the sukkah. I don't have to schlep out to the sukkah. I could stay in my beautiful house. Then it means that spiritually we're not alive. Spiritually we're like bunch of shvai. David HaMelech says, David Hashem Ori, he says, Acha sha'alti me'es Hashem osav akesh. Shifti bebeis Hashem kol yimei chayai. David says, there's one thing that I ask. Acha sha'alti me'es, one thing that I ask from God, osav akesh, and this is what I'll ask. He repeats himself, this is what I'll ask. What is it that the one thing that he's asking? It's that he should sit in the house of the Lord his whole life. Why does David have to give that introduction to say, Acha sha'alti? Let me just say, God, this is what I want. But David is saying, singularly, the only thing that I want, the only aspiration that I have, the only she'ifa is that shifti beveis Hashem kol yemei chayai. And that's a sign of spiritual greatness. Shavuos is man simchaseinu. The irony, it's the holiday of Simcha. The irony is, you would think that Simcha should be connected to materialism. When we're in the house, our fancy, beautiful, exquisite houses, that's where we should celebrate, not in our flimsy sukkah that's so flimsy you can't even stand up to the weather. Why is Sukkah man Simcha Seinu? But the answer is because Simcha is not based on how much stuff you have. That's not what gives a person Simcha. Simcha is living a meaningful life. Simcha is satisfying the needs of the neshama. The neshama doesn't care about materialism. The neshama doesn't care about wealth and prominence and physical materialistic pleasures. The neshama pines and aspires to be close to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Shifti beveis Hashem kol yemei chayai. And when a person walks into the sukkah, if the whole year and his whole life or her life, the person is aspiring to. The one thing I want is shifti b'beis Hashem kol yemei chayai. So then when the person comes into the sukkah, then that's the true Zman Simchasenu. And when a person is denied the ability to be fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah, they're not going to chas v'shalom be mevayit. They're not going to kick the sukkah. On the contrary, they're going to be so distraught and upset and in pain because they're not able to fulfill such a precious mitzvah. Let's hope that in Mirz Hashem, we will be able to fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah. It'll be Zman Simchasenu. I thank you for listening, and I hope in Mirz Hashem, all of us have a wonderful Yontif, Zman Simchasenu, and a Chag Kosher V'Sameach.